And this is actually my wife, Melissa Carlson.
Yes, I'm Melissa Carlson. I'm a research project manager at the University of South Florida.
All right. So big thank you to all our sponsors here, putting on Convenex and graciously having us through that here. So uh, go through agenda. So this session is going to be about AI governance and how we can learn from other industries and how to potentially incorporate the more governance factors and account for more of the human factor when kind of rolling out AI technology. So start off, speak a little bit more about ourselves and why two seemingly random people are up here talking about what topic here. Well, talk a little bit about the state of AI, the gaps and potential gaps in governance that we have today with how we roll out AI. Uh, Melissa here is going to tell us some background about the IRB and why it relates here, and what we can learn from it. We're going to fulfill kind of our idea here, AIRB, think questions along the way. So again, my name is Matt Carlson. My background pretty obvious, speaking here, but I'll let you maybe talk about yourself and then play into our topic.
Yeah, so like I said, I'm a research project manager at the University of South Florida, Tampa. I've actually been doing research in behavioral health, specifically the cross section of mental health and substance use for about the past 13 years or so. And then about the past six, that has evolved into research administration. So the ethical background and oversight that's required for research.
And we will type together. All right. So in these next couple of slides are going to feel a little doom and gloom. I don't mean it that way. I like myself, and I'm sure everybody in here love AI and like what the potential, like kind of skill sets and the way that it kind of levels you up to do things that maybe you weren't able to do before. So, but I do want to kind of point out, I think like some of these kind of statistics resonate really big for me personally. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. But I just want to kind of highlight kind of something that maybe we know it exists, but maybe don't talk about it. So there was this PwC kind of global workforce study that was published, and just kind of looking across the board here. Like I think a lot of us know, like most of us, or at least a lot of our workforce, is using AI technologies already. Um, 1 in 3 people, though, remain worried or confused about AI at work. And that could be for many reasons. We'll highlight maybe a couple of the topics, but whether that's, job insecurity, AI anxiety, for me, it's that constant pressure to stay up to date all the time, changes. So, like even coming to an event like this for a week and like not focusing on, I feel like I'm missing out already just in a couple of days of either announcements or just learning how to do new things. So, uh, again, just highlighting not just maybe it's out kind of doing here or anything like that, but I do think it's important to kind of acknowledge some of the impacts that AI kind of plays in our daily lives here. So I talked a little bit about it. So AI anxiety is real. It's that kind of fear of the unknown. Like, what is my job going to look like in a year, 2 years from now, 6 months from now? Uh, what are the skills that I need to learn to constantly stay up to date with? I personally struggle even just staying up to date with Microsoft's update, Copilot, and all of our agents that we release, feature updates. So that's not even accounting for kind of the overall industry and the pace of change here. So, and speaking of that pace of change, is that constant pace. So I think a lot of us have this experience of change management. And I think a lot of organizations have done, over time, ensure the different levels of how we kind of manage that change, uh, but more of a real time impact. So communicating, training, and adoption materials. But one thing like it really kind of stood out to me while researching a lot of this, the idea of change capacity. How much capacity do we have for that change? Not just are we doing that change management well, but are we overloading our workforce with too many changes? Some of that is not preventable. It's just race to the top with AI technology, but I definitely want to kind of at least acknowledge like that capacity there. And then I think we going to speak a little bit about the anxiety.
Yeah, no, you're good. So yes, like you said, AI anxiety is very real, and I think it's real across all industries and employment level. I see it in my field as well. So it's just really about not um the idea of I'm going to lose my job, but maybe just the uncertainty of what the next 6 months might look like. What's going to change? How is my role going to change? Are the expectations going to change? What is the future of my role going to look like, which can really directly impact how someone shows up to work every day. And lastly, the mental health impact, just to touch a little bit about that too. When things are rapidly changing, like they do with AI, this could just induce human effects. So, anxiety, stress, burnout. So, employees are trying to adapt to this constant change. And while organizations might be focusing more on implementation and efficiency of the tool itself, there's a human impact. And sometimes that could be really easily overlooked.
No. I actually use my area. So I talked a little bit about kind of my personal exactly good and bad. And in my categories stand out to you, or if there's one that maybe we didn't address here, it's okay to be vulnerable here. But I know we've talked a lot about the overall of AI. So if anybody uh, comments on any category, no, but like what do I need to learn? They love it. Yeah, yeah, like yeah. Listen, you just okay. I'll take any neutral just so that I then yeah, yeah. We- well, yeah, they thought those thought more cool student. Yeah, 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 definitely that keeps changing, seeming like more and more difficult to keep up with. So like as we talk about these impacts, I will get to the point of like kind of how the workforce impacts also impact kind of adoption and some of the key things that we already focused on today, why and some of those other. So we have to left off. I think we're probably familiar territory here. So when we have resistance to change or adoption, that directly impacts, and that's pretty obvious that those are visible, like we can see like this non-adoption or the lack of depth with a non-adoption. I think the right thing is one to acknowledge or at least call out, which is uh, maybe new territory for this type of technology. And that's like the folks that are not overusing it, but overly dependent on it. And then I think like there's something you said enough and feel like that there's been some part of me too that I've already felt this that maybe don't focus so much on PowerShell anymore because hey, I got a really great AI. I don't maybe I don't necessarily need to stay up on that and I'm reinvesting that time into other skills that I didn't have the capacity for before. But I just think it's something that uh call up not only looking at those registers, also kind of forward ahead the idea as well as we kind of continue to evolve with the topic today. And then the last slide here, I promise, it's kind of how would some of these impact, how some of the attacks that we have made downstream attacks kind of our adoption outcomes. So I spoke on it already, like that adoption quality. We may see a lot of people using AI, but what's the depth and what's their feedback? What's it really quality? And kind of this governance framework that we'll talk about will help kind of address some of this as well.
And so I think workforce trust also comes into that. It could become really fragile when employees don't really fully understand how AI decisions are being made on the front end because they're not usually involved. We know that's not a typical process. And so transparency, communication, and just some sort of inclusion of the workforce in the process may gain their buy-in, which I think is just really critical to them engaging with the tools and having the confidence to go to leadership if they don't understand something.
Something I personally do, just that's something that to me, like I really appreciate this. So when I do a lot of Copilot training and to address like the top right one, I would make a point to, I know that when I explain Copilot and general, generative AI, large language model to the average user who may work in HR or finance, I'm not going to be able to explain to them how a large language model works feel that they may not know it exactly, but I do find really good engagement and kind of results from at least at a high level, explaining how the tool works for me. If I know how it works, even if I don't fully understand it, it helps me kind of trust, maybe build a little bit more trust or foundation for that trust, uh, so that I know what are the kind of the guardrails that are there? What are the safety mechanisms that are already built in? If I know that kind of detail, I think it kind of helps, at least me personally, with better adoption. So
And just, I mean, there's a burnout risk in any role at any organization. Just being cognizant that over time, the constant pressure to relearn something, readjust, keep up with the pace in which something is changing, can create that fatigue really across all position levels, no matter how you cut it.
yeah. So, all right. So I'm going to talk a couple slides here about potential gaps that we may have in AI governance today. I think there's a lot of organizations, most of us now, we have some really good structural governance in place already. Uh, we probably think of those as security checklists, making sure legal clients are involved, that general counsel is doing their reviews. And I think the reason why we're having this conversation is because generative AI in general and such a profound impact on the way we do work and even live our lives to that extent. So I think it's rare to see this type of technology, and I think that is the kind of the reason why we're even talking about should we adopt or update our governance model. So just point out a couple things here where we may have some of these gaps. Adoption success is often measured in adoption and bot. If we're deploying, cloud storage solution, like that's probably a decent metric for that. But what's something that's so profoundly affecting kind of the one port, like we really want to start considering more metrics or checklists that go beyond just the standard governance model. So this governance may arrive late or not at all if AI is already in the workforce. And I think what you'll see throughout this presentation is that this human and ethical factor may fall outside of the scope of a traditional governance board today. And then we're going to kind of show you a framework to integrate that better. So this would a standard governance board may look like at your organization or some flavor of this. You'll usually have like your technical lead. That would be like your AI and subject matter expert, and then you have representation across all of the standard kind of expertise and subject matter experts across the board here. So security compliance, legal privacy, enterprise architecture, that overall landscape, ensuring that systems are integrating properly, not just the one that's being discussed at the table. And then change management, it's usually a part of that as well. And it's an easy kind of maybe one to scapegoat and say, hey, like we were accounting for that with change management, but I think what we're going to show you today goes kind of a step beyond. So again, just the framework of what your governance model may or may not look like, and then as we progress, kind of how that and then this process. So you saw who the people at the table were. So and then those people kind of or that process kind of flows through this in a typical scenario. So we have vendor selection, what tool are we going to use? That governance kind of board will view it, go through their needs of approval. We'll roll out a pilot. We will measure adoption, get some back, and then we'll expand further. So this should not be new to anybody, but just want to set that kind of framework there. And that you kind of feel like what things might be missing. So because of that impact of AI, we performing investable was one was impact assessment. How often are we getting this feedback loop from our employees? Is it a one point in time kind of thing, or are we going to continuously monitor that, given the fact that the technology changes? And then the process may or may not already have a defined path or authority pause or reiterate or reevaluate or continue with expansion based on kind of some of those data points. So again, just to highlight, not wrong governance model for AI, but what we're saying is that this model may be complete and kind of show you the framework to build on that. Alrighty, and then now you're gonna wonder why is Melissa, who's not in AI, kind of the tech field. So tell us about this.
Yes. So first, I don't think we really addressed how we got to this point in our
Yeah.
conversation. So obviously I come from a research background, and he talks constantly about rollouts of new tools and products that are really cool, some of which I use in my role as well. And my biggest question is always, okay, so how are you assessing the people factor, the human factor? Are you getting their feedback? Are you integrating their feedback? And yeah.
Yeah, like this kind of this with this whole session was kind of born just from like long car rides,
Mhm.
like either headline news or different things coming up, and it's like really just combining that expertise and for my lens and your lens of kind of that more institutional research uh, framework,
Mhm.
and like that's kind of how we got there.
Yeah. I'm gonna switch the
Yep.
All right. So, institutional review boards. This is a model that has proven to work in research for decades and decades. I'm not going to skip ahead and tell you how this will adapt to AI yet. I'm just purely going to show you all the information, inner workings of how I use it in research. So, IRBs are a formal oversight body that is used in research, specifically involving human subject participants. So, their role is to evaluate risks, monitor ethical considerations, and ensure that people are protected throughout the life cycle of a research project. So, not just after the harm occurs, but before and during the implementation of something. And so the IRB was originated actually through past ethical failures. So it's now codified in US law, especially for federally funded research. And before we propose that something new, I just want to introduce a governance model that really has been effective over time. So, starting with origin, IRBs were not created proactively at all. They emerged because real ethical failures caused real harm to real people in research. And at the time, there was really no consistent standards for informed consent, making sure that people understood what they were participating in and how it impacted them. And there was no oversight or accountability for the people actually conducting the research as well. So we have evolved into a formalized system for ethical review with structured processes within universities, larger hospital systems that conduct clinical research, with defined ethical principles and ongoing monitoring designed to reduce future harm before it actually occurs. So today, IRBs are federally required under 45 CFR 46, which you could also find as the common rule. And it serves as a standard safeguard across research institutions. But really, IRBs are there to protect humans by design, and they're not an afterthought, essentially.
Think even before like we talk about some of the what we can learn from the IRB, maybe a call out is that a lot of the IRB actually has very similar governance processes as well, like as IT industry does in terms of like, I know we talked about like there's legal clients and other aspects like that. So I think they already share a lot of similarities, and it will kind of show and draw some more parallels. Well,
Absolutely. And so in 1979, the Belmont Report was established with three core ethical principles that still guide IRBs today. And those are respect for persons, beneficence, and justice. The Belmont Report included a set of ethical guidelines for individuals that are conducting the research with human subjects. So these principles provide the foundational ethical framework that we're going to define both in research terms and then translate to AI as well. And so that first one, respect for persons, this typically includes, like I had mentioned, the consent process. But what it really means at the end of the day is that an individual who is willing to take part in research 100% is informed of the expectations of their participation, the potential benefits and risks that may occur, and that they have the option to choose to leave at any time and disengage or to speak up about a process that isn't going well for them.
and I think the way that this one translates to AI is that do our users informed of the tooling and the tool set? So are we transparent in what the AI sees, how it's stored, what types of influences does that have? That could be at the model level, it could be at the organizational level, and how we're rolling it out, whether it's like instruction that we're including in our agents, and that throughout all of the process that there's that kind of visibility and transparency in the tool set.
Mhm. In beneficence, I won't speak too much about this. It simply means that there is minimum risk with maximum benefit, which can be translated as well.
Yeah. So we'll talk more about this, but this to me kind of translates to, are we tracking the right benefits? So I know, of course, all of us be holding to somebody on ROI or kind of cost and adoption. But to me, this kind of really takes that another level, and is not only are we tracking those kind of adoption metrics, but are we tracking that potential for harm or overuse or that anxiety, or just that tone within the workforce of how this technology is impacting it.
Yep. And justice, which really is about fairness at the end of the day. So in research, it just means that we're making sure that one group of people is not carrying all of the risk while another one is reaping all of the benefits.
And again, translated to kind of that AI governance model is um, who gains from it. That transparent kind of, I know that's a common theme that you'll hear here, but kind of is there any cost to pay? And that may be things that we already feel like now, like that maybe it's skill atrophy or uh, that over dependence. And there's other things here too, like of course, like Microsoft has the Microsoft uh, responsible AI practice, so which is widely known. But I think this goes kind of beyond that in how it's kind of really impacting at the organizational level.
Right. Moving on to the fun stuff. I'm going to ask you to stick with me here. Um, Now we explore the IRB review process in practice. And so understanding this process helps illustrate how a similar approach, keep in mind, could be adapted for AI governance. And so the way IRB works in a research institution starts with the pre approval process. And so before research involving any human subject, it's required to go through the pre approval process, which is called the IRB review. And so a submission typically includes a laundry list of required items that is included in a study protocol. This can be your aims, objectives, potential outcomes, the entire project design, data analysis plan, security, confidentiality, a description of your target population, how they're going to be impacted, the risks, the benefits, all of the justifications. And additionally, that's where we also submit a copy of our consent forms, any recruitment materials, and relevant information about collaborative partners. So when I say we do everything on the front end, we have to think through it. That is exactly what we do. Secondly, continuous monitoring. So I'll say this many times, but oversight does not stop after approval. So this is called an annual continuing review process that we engage in. And it's basically a requirement to submit a summary of our progress, any of our findings. This allows IRB the opportunity to assess if we're sticking to our protocol, audit any documentation for compliance, and ask clarifying questions if needed. Third, adverse event reporting. So at any time during our project, um, any project really in any field, there's a potential for adverse events to occur. These can be more minimal and general, such as a protocol deviation, or more serious, such as a large scale data breach. So, due to the seriousness of some events, the IRB requires serious events to be submitted for review in a time bound manner. This could be within 12 to 24 hours of an event occurring, to assess and determine if an event occurred due to the functioning of the protocol itself or due to external factors, which kind of leads into the next one, authority or pause to stop. So they're never going to pause or stop your study without good reason, which mostly occurs with an adverse event. So really, once you present it to them, it it's their process to tell you, hey, stop what you're doing. You're causing harm to the humans, essentially. So that rarely happens. Your protocol should be pretty sound at the beginning, but it's a good opportunity for them, again, to assess, consider, and determine cause for pause or stoppage. And lastly, as a lot of other governance structures follow, IRB meetings are not open to the public. They're also not open to us as researchers to attend. So, public summaries and final voting outcomes are available to us to keep that transparency, usually at a later time.
So I think as we hear kind of some of these, how the IRB work, I do kind of call out how we may or may not be accounting for some of this process in our governance structure today. So adverse event reporting. So I know all of us have, a security hotline or something to report security breach, like data governance, huge aspect of IT, right? Um, so start to, think about how AI plays that because of its impact and like usage of it. Do we have those like kind of safe reporting channels for AI usage in general? And then like this authority to pause and stop. And we're going to talk more about these in this new proposed kind of idea. But I think this is a great kind of framework here that we're building on and some background here.
Great. So, how is an IRB structured? At the research level, it's a multidisciplinary approach so that the board can effectively oversee ethical considerations from all angles across the landscape. So, the structure is very intentional and it's also required by federal law. So, an IRB must be at least 5 members, sometimes more. And what that means for me in the social behavioral realm is that it's typically 5 faculty members. So, when you're looking at a social or behavioral project, you're wanting a mental health expert, a substance use expert, criminal thinking expert, public policy, and someone from aging studies for life cycle of life. Moving on to the 1+1 scientist and non-scientist, this is a requirement because it prevents decisions from being made through only a scientific lens. So while the scientist evaluates the methodology and technical validity of something, the non-scientist represents the people, the ethics, the public understanding of what's being presented, and just the broader human perspective. There's also one unaffiliated member. That person brings real world experience and community perspective, but they have no ties to the institution or to the project itself, meaning they have no stake in the game. So their role is purely to be an independent voice without any organizational pressure or any investment in the project itself. And lastly, zero conflict. This is just taking conflict of interest out of the equation. If you're one of those faculty members that's reviewing a project, if your project ends up on the table for review, you don't decide. So you get replaced just with the project.
All right. The big reveal here. So we talked kind of about like the impacts that AI, uh, you know, uh, uh, what maybe ones that are less discussed openly. And then we looked at kind of what maybe a typical governance board or framework may look like. And then Melissa shared kind of her industry expertise and how we went from that institutional review board process. So here's where it all comes together. So thank you for sticking with us up to now. So what this is the Artificial Intelligence Review Board, or AIRB. And this is going to take what we have today and augment it and extend it, taking from the principles that we can kind of draw parallels to from that IRB world that you operate in. So, all right. So, what does this look like? We have this AIRB, this IRB inspired governance function and framework that introduces this human impact into AI decision making. So some elements that will kind of draw throughout the IRB directly, pre-deployment, so evaluating that potential impact on our workforce. Now, when we talk about a lot of this stuff, it doesn't necessarily always mean that we're going to change the outcome of what we've set out to accomplish. But for me, like it helps to acknowledge some of this stuff, even if it doesn't necessarily change the outcomes. And sort of having kind of that representation and an additional voice at the table that really is going beyond that security test. So we're going to talk about in detail kind of this middle section here, this workforce representation. So like Melissa said, like you have a non-expert or non-scientist as part of your board, having this workforce representation, ensuring that the voice of the people is heard and it's part of that decision making process that had a real seat at the table, not just those feedback loops that get reviewed and summarized and then may or may not be used later. So, and they continue on with that theme is kind of that human impact oversight, continuously monitoring not just the adoption aspect, but also the impact and the sentiment and just the general tone of kind of how these tools are influenced.
Mhm. And we're also, this model or function has not been tested yet. Is something that we've just learned from each other in both of our fields that we thought shared a good connection. So we're also not asking you to change your entire AI governance model, but to somehow bring in that human impact to decision making when talking about AI.
All right, so let's draw some direct comparisons as we have an up and that's monitored and the result from the IRQs. So this is what that kind of IRP board, how it can be structured and how it can break it, well, um, uh, perspectives and expertise. So we keep our same use this five mem- background. That'll be your security, your legal, compliance, change management. Those are still continue to be seated at the table. We saw kind of that technical expert role. So this is the idea that you have your own internal kind of AI who's leading that project or that service or function, whatever you're rolling out. But adding this external kind of viewpoint, so an external subject matter expert sitting at the board, not conflicted, of no skin in the game. They're not biased towards any organizational outcomes, and we'll kind of grab that a little bit more during the next slide. The next week, we're going to talk a lot about this one. So this is ensuring that, doing that human and AI kind of interaction is good. There's that role. It's not meant to be, I know, like people will see this and like, oh, that just means they're there to say no all the time. That's absolutely not kind of what we're proposing. Talk more about it. And then kind of that zero conflicted numbers. This may or may not translate as directly, but certainly to be a consideration of the board members if there is any conflict of interest for one reason or the other. It should hopefully be part of your governance kind of in today. But if not, certainly draw that inspiration from the IRP. Okay, so at the top, we see it's the same levels that we had before. We have the technical lead and all the other subject matter. I'm going to talk about this left box here. We have our external AI subject matter expert. This is the one that would pair up with your internal AI, and that would be that one model. So what this is doing is providing that kind of independent, vendor neutral AI expertise to your board. A lot, I talk a lot about, and because that's kind of Microsoft's product, like AI currently use, but certainly lots of organizations are developing products and integrating AI into their products and services that they sell to their customers. So having kind of that external viewpoint, not only help kind of that objective, hey, are really doing this right? It could also bring in cross industry experience and viewpoints. It could just kind of be that that kind of voice of reason from an external point of view, like, hey, is this really how we want? Just how you want your products to be seen as, or maybe there's some unintentional use that we may not have considered before. So this again, and I think it's somewhat obvious, kind of bringing that external objectivity there, and again drawing directly from the IRB how you have that external participant in the board there.
Mhm. All right. So that employee advocate that we're proposing and introducing, I just want to say from the top, this is not someone that is meant to be anti-technology or resistant to innovation, period. It's someone who really is invested in organizational success, that understands the goals of AI adoption, but also is the voice of the workforce. They're there to help ensure that workforce experiences, concerns, and successes even are part of the decision-making process. So their role is to bring structured insight um, from the workforce into governance discussions. meaning they can identify where employees may need support, such as training, where implementation is going really well for future adoptions that you're going to bring in, and where human impact may not be fully understood. So, getting a pulse on that burnout, on stress, on AI anxiety. The goal is not to slow down innovation at all by adding these two positions, but to help organizations implement AI in a way that's sustainable, trusted, and effective for both the business aspect of the organization and the people working. And so, what would it look like for an employee advocate to sit at the table? The purpose of this role is not to protect humans from AI or resist innovation. The purpose is really to optimize the human AI partnership by making workforce experience part of the governance discussion, like I said. But also, it's a strategy really to gain buy-in from your workforce and increase workforce trust. So the employee advocate can be someone selected by the workforce themselves or appointed considering their lived experience and what they bring to the table. But really, above all, they have a formal role and seat in the decision making process and voting privileges. So, most importantly, they are representing the workforce in a structured but also data driven way. So, they're responsible for taking the pulse, meaning they have insight into sharing, servicing adoption, friction that might be happening, identifying support needs, monitoring those well being indicators, but also highlighting where implementation is working really well. So the value comes from bringing a perspective into governance that may be missing otherwise in really highly technical and operational conversations. It's also a seat that comes with a clear tenure with ongoing accountability, which might actually help bridge that gap between leadership based decision making and employees doing the actual work in some organizations.
I think the big ones that stick out to me on this is not a change champion. When we were first talking about this idea, it's like, oh, it sounds like a change champion. Like they kind of bring in some of that kind of have a finger on the pulse of like what's going on and like what we need to work from better. So I think that was a big one for me. And then also the governance authority is really having an equal seat at the table. It's not about giving more voting power to this particular person or less than maybe a security counterpart or a general counsel counterpart. It's about like, being an equal voice and equal authority at the table. All right, so we kind of saw what that updated government board may look like. Now let's look at what a potential updated government process may look like. So we have some of the same kind of dates here along the way. Some are updated and some are new. So we have vendor selection. Then we move into what was previously to standard governance kind of review and gates that we go to pro. Now updated that AIRP. So having that human factor kind of accounted for throughout that review process. We continue on with our pilot. We do our workforce and back assessment, so kind of really understanding not only the adoption standpoint, but how does this change the role work of you know. the- I think the big thing here is that it's not all about the negative aspects of it. I do truly believe that there are maybe more positive ones that you can like trends or opportunities that you can identify by kind of putting more effort and kind of uh, process behind it. So, maybe a rule does change for the better. I certainly don't like spending a lot of time like sending follow-up emails and all that kind of stuff. So that's an easy example. But I think as you start to roll out AI technology throughout different roles, really understanding how that work the workforce there. We continue through the rollout, and then with that rollout, we continue to render adoption. Like that's obviously a metric again. A lot of us are very new. So but with that, we start to include things like well peak. So, what is general tone that, and like, are there any indicators that we can start to track over time that may be ones that we need to address, whether that is that AI anxiety or additional stress or, hey, you know what, I'm feeling a lot better because I have this new tool and I'm not spending time doing stuff I don't like, and I'm spending more time, doing things I can. It goes both ways. Or kind of start to look deeper some of those metrics. Continuous monitoring. Melissa talked a lot about this in the IRB process. And I think it's key here too. Not everything that we do and roll out is going to trigger that deep process. So, Copilot comes out with a great new feature or some other, tool that comes out, or maybe there's a big major change, maybe not a major change. They may not kick off this review process. They get to pilot the courses like continuous monitoring as these things evolve every week. Certainly not period this process every time there's a new page or tool that comes out. So I think that's where that continuous monitoring has come to play. And on the next couple, talk more about how we can accomplish that continuous monitoring. And then finally, at the end here, we have, and this can fit both at the end and throughout the process. Well, I do think it's important to redefine a pathway for expansion, which we usually do, but also pausing to redesign it or potentially even stopping it altogether. So having that predefined path makes it a lot easier for somebody who has identified either an adverse event or an opportunity for us to become better. They're not kind of paving the way of that process pausing and also what they want to pause for at the same time. We're identifying it. We're kind of setting the framework. It was a lot easier for us to audit or go back to the drawing board or maybe update the way that we're kind of rolling out some of the tech. All right. So like at the bottom, I'll say here, so nothing was good. Like all of the bullet points or kind of the steps in the process continue to be there. Some might be maybe adopted a little bit or adapted a little bit. And then others we've kind of changed, kind of thinking about how we're accounting for the human factor. We've added in a few more steps.
Yeah, so I think just opening up this, monitoring the human impact with the ongoing oversight. One of the most important concepts behind IRB is that oversight does not stop once something is approved. I know I've said it 3 times now. There is ongoing internal evaluation, monitoring through the life cycle of a project. Like I said, to identify that early risk, respond to concerns, and just continuously assess the human factor over time. And so I think the same concept is important here in AI governance because implementation outcomes, like he mentioned, change over time. I think when you're rolling out a new product now, it's evolved so much in a week or in a month, in 3 months, 6 months, that you may just need to readjust. So the ongoing evaluation and monitoring is just for effective readjustment.
Yep. So we're certainly not going to give you a full checklist of everything that you want to monitor. For it to be very methodical, it should be part of your your updating of that governance process. Then bringing in the right subject matter experts to understand what we need to monitor. Just some examples here, right? Self-reporting stress indicators, and we'll kind of go through tools that we can use for that. Maybe it's AI, health desk AI related escalations. It continues to build on the adoption metrics that you're already tracking today, and then adding in some of that more human factor to it. So we continuously monitor those, and in the next slide, the upstairs tools that we can use to do this. So we identify what we want to monitor. We're going to decide how we're going to monitor it. And then finally, when to act. And really, this is probably the most important one because I personally have, when rolling out technology, like everybody knows what we want to track. Not just how many monthly active users do we have on Copilot, but rarely do I see the effort put into when are we going to, what number, what threshold of each metric will kick off some type of action that we need to perform, and what will that action be? So I think it's adopting kind of this governance framework. I think that's a critically important one because we could do it with next data collection up front, figure out what we want to collect. But really where the rubber meets the road for me is when are we going to act, find the threshold, and then what are we going to do based on that threshold that gets met. All right, so how can we monitor? So go back like here. Almost did a whole slide on this one bullet point. Rather, to the bottom, the middle, monitoring without surveillance. Huge for me. Like I have in my prior life, like I had a lot of like digital privacy practices that I have. So I'm very hypersensitive to like a word monitoring or coming off that based surveillance, kind of that surveillance mindset. Look, people at the table of the governance board, everybody, including myself, they want as much detailed data as possible. So I think kind of uh, a role that workforce kind of advocate plays that um, let's make sure we're collecting this right data, the right level of detail data. Um, more is not always better. So make sure that in the spirit of what we're trying to list with this new AI kind of AIRB framework, that we're not over surveilling and, where it would be nice to have really great detailed user level data. Let's make sure that we're methodical about that we're not over collecting, we're looking at patterns, well, pattern recognition across the impact, not just the actual kind of individual user level. So, but kind of like that one out. All right. So I am biased here. So I'm going to show you the M365 tool. There's a certain non-exhaustive list and you can decide which one works best for you, but just to highlight a few of these. If you have a certain number of Copilot licenses in your tenant, you have access to the Copilot dashboard if you look. So that's going to help kind of look at that aggregate level of adoption and kind of the standard. Certainly not each the way it's really cool. We are obviously going to kind of highlight how they can be measured in this or utilize in the conversation. So, really kind of measuring that the anxiety, that kind of real human impact, tracking that harm and more of that organizational wide kind of longitudinal view of the landscape there. We move into we post the more real time. So he was like for time kind of for left. Viva Pulse is going to get more to that real time team level feedback and aggregation. So you kind of see that a little bit more often than what you can see up to like you would want kind of that pulse check mid cycles at the more the micro level. And then finally, deep insight kind of showing that behavioral pattern time on systems, that kind of and then effects like burnout tendency or, you know, uh, working after hours and that thing. And when you think about some of these things that they track with these tools, I wouldn't be doing my own self justice by saying like we want to make sure that we're not over surveilling, that we're monitoring at the aggregate level, that we're doing it appropriately and again, I think that's where that has what that it really can you play a part in determining where where we set the boundary for that. And then importantly, Melissa talked about how that advocate brings in data. It's not that role is not meant to be opinion based, or maybe they can bring in some sheer lived experiences, but it's meant to be data driven. These are the tools that advocate can bring or the data that comes from these tools, what that advocate brings to the table to justify what their decisions are within that governance process or their justifications, good or bad. So it's important that this kind of data is not only consumed by the stakeholders that would usually consume it, but also available to that employee advocate to bring that data versus just the case value. Okay, like she really didn't like AI. Let's just put it off. Like, that's not the intention here. All right. But we got you here. We were like, man, what? Learn about the IRB? Like, this is supposed to be a tech comp. So, all right. So we showed you the framework, the kind of the new process and kind of what all of that, how we drew those parallels and really how we're just personally kind of advocating like for more human involvement and consideration versus like the like check off box to make sure that DOP policy with that. So here's a few things that you can do now. Well, first one, create a safe reporting channel. You don't already have one. I mean, these are pretty common, and maybe you have one that can be used for other year, but that safe reporting channel can be used responsibly, but also give an opportunity for those that do want great feature that maybe may or may not be acted upon, but at least giving that channel for that feedback in a safe and appropriate way. So if you don't have it already, or you have one that is advertised for this use case, I certainly would encourage you that that's really easy way to kind of start the process off.
Also, designating that employee advocate that we described. We know the reality of it is you're not going to go back next week to your organization and assign an employee advocate. I think what we're looking for in making the suggestions that are up there right now is that you consider it and maybe you take it back to your current governance team and talk about what a role like this may look like and how it will contribute to the conversation and making decisions.
We talked like like discussing this and researching it. Like this employee advocate role can take many forms, and it really would depend on like what your organization looks like. So like we even discussed like at an institute at a university, this could be three roles, three individual people into one combined role, which is like a student, faculty member, and a staff member. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be one single person, and it could maybe be a small team or committee that then has a single representation on the board. But the important thing is that it's reflective of your workforce, your persona, that and non-tech. So we're all biased around the tech side. So bringing in that kind of non-expert AI expert or tech expert and into the tech lab. All right, convenient IRB. So we have the secret reporting tool. We've identified that now. So considering your governance structure, bring that seat to the table because I'm a voice, a real kind of authority figure at that ARP. So, we're certainly just you've been very much drawing inspiration from a different field and what that could look like, and yours may take different shapes or forms, but definitely consider some of the key points and principles that we discussed and maybe update your governance boards, give it a fancy ARB nickname. Everybody loves fancy.
Also, require or consider a human impact assessment. And research, I love to do a needs assessment before I go into a project. I want to know what the community is thinking. I want to hear both quantitatively and qualitatively what your perspective is. So you have the opportunity to check the pulse of your workforce, and whether that's simply sending out a survey and asking them if the training they're receiving is adequate, or asking them what was great about the adoption process, what were the challenges, what we can work on moving forward. That's something very small that you could do pretty quickly.
All right, so and then are they establishing the modern? Yeah, so I'm not going to reiterate again the importance of like that continuous monitoring. But as you have, you could be in your ILB, you have your employee advocate, utilize the tools that you're already using today, or kind of gaining insight and data directly from your end users, whether that's some of the tools that we talked about today or others. And then to start having that data feed into those new roles, then looking at that data through a new lens of that AIRP aspect. And maybe there's some extra kind of metrics that you can start collecting that are pretty easy wins. And then of course, now that you have your AIRB, using that to inform decision making beyond just hey, I don't like it, let's not do it. But no, tell me why you don't. Tell me the impact. Like show me the data. Does everybody have that after yet? Show me the data. No, that just you. This thing been ingrained in my brain. All right, that's it. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening.
Very much.
I appreciate the topic, but hopefully everybody learned anything. I am here to answer any questions that you have. I know that all of you were incentivized and bribed to be here. So I will hand it off to Aaron, but